Hello, my friends. It's Top Line. It's a great show. I think a lot of people like it. It's about go to market, it's about B2B technology. I'm Sam Jacobs. I'm joined by AJ Bruno, CEO of QuotaPath, and Asad Zaman, the CEO of Sales Talent Agency. And we're doing really well. Thanks for asking.
I didn't ask. Did you ask, Asad?
Feeling fantastic.
Welcome to Top Line, the podcast for the best founders, operators, and investors in B2B tech. Every week, AJ Bruno, Asad Zaman, and me, Sam Jacobs, will break down what's important for you to know to be the most well-informed professionals in the market.
Customer churn doesn't have to be unpredictable. Totango's Customer Revenue Optimization Suite delivers actionable insights empowering CS and revenue leaders to take strategic, proactive steps to retain and expand their most valuable customers. Take back control and put your revenue on repeat. Visit totango.com to learn more.
AJ, how are you feeling?
I'm great. I'm good. I have a board meeting next week. I am working through a couple of big deals myself. Our director of CS is out, so I'm doing data audits with our customers. It's so much fun. It's just
You love your customers. You love spending time with your customers.
I'm looking at my calendar right now, and green represents customers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 meetings that are customer facing this week.
That's great, dude.
I think that's like it. It's a good way to spend time, 10 meetings a week in the market. That can be energizing.
We held our first account review with a challenging account that we had. It's a bigger account. And it was the entire customer journey. So all sales, pre-sales, solutions team, CX, the AM, everyone, the management team, engineering, and we went through and learned so much going through it. Like there's some things that I didn't know that we were doing and how we were communicating to our customers. And I heard it and I was like, holy cow. But sometimes we're so tactically focused, right? We're all heads down in our own work and we're not looking at the bigger picture. So it was like a first time for us to take a step back and actually look at the entire customer journey of like, oh, why did we build the solutions thing this way? Oh, they ran into these 5 bugs. I'd be really frustrated as a customer too. I'd be like, what? This software is terrible. Get me something else. So
how do you get people to attend these reviews? Because if I'm a client, every time I get asked to come to these meetings, I get very annoyed. And I don't
know. No, it wasn't with the customer.
So it was like an internal account.
Internal.
Yeah.
It was internal. I was like, how do I get my own people to show up to my own meeting? Tell them. What do you do, Asad? That would be a different problem. How do you get your own team to show up to meetings you invite them to?
Guys, where's everyone? I thought we had a company-wide meeting. What about do you guys do account reviews with customers? How do you get customers to attend one?
I haven't done that yet. I don't think we're at the point. I mean, we're not an enterprise level solution to do that or warrant it. I don't know. Do you do that? I feel like you're probably more suited than I am.
No, I hate them myself, so I never want to do them for anyone else.
Sam, have you ever done anything like that from a CRO perspective?
I mean, you can do like a QBR. Is that what you're talking about?
No, I think he was talking about more than a QBR, right, Asad? Or were you talking about QBR?
Even QBR is like, I'm like, well, what's the end value that the customer is getting to want?
Very little. The point of it is like reinforce the value for the vendor so that you can secure the renewal.
NPS score of 9. Got it. We're doing it.
Ah, nice. So you're not paying attention while we're talking. You're just looking at NPS.
No, I'm saying Sam, I was making a quote of what you would figure out during those conversations.
Right. Yeah, I'm an idiot. Okay, well, good. Let's go. What's happening in the world, Asad? That's my question to you, sir.
There are many things happening. But this morning, our friend Jason Lumpkin had, I think, a really interesting post that we can probably click into. So the premise of the post is that the downturn is over in SaaS and B2B. It's over. And if you haven't recovered from it, it's time to be honest. It's you. And the points he's making is venture capital is back. It's flowing into AI and growth stage companies. But it's as fast and as furious as 2021. Hypergrowth is back, usually some type of intersection between AI and SaaS. Competition is up, which obviously makes a lot of sense. AI has unlocked more B2B budget. Morgan Stanley says that 50% of the budget for AI is new versus a reallocation from other places. Public SaaS companies are growing faster than they were growing before. And so the idea here is we're out of the downturn. If you're not winning right now, this is a you problem. And then Sam, I think somewhere else, he also spoke about how the focus has now shifted back to growth primarily away from efficiency, right?
Yeah, he did say that. He said he mentioned it. It was like a similar post, and he said, you're out of the loop if you're still talking about efficiency.
This I find very interesting and kind of irritating. Maybe is the right word. I don't understand what that means. Like, are we telling businesses that being efficient is bad? Why is it bad? I just don't understand. Like, maybe AJ, you put yourself in the shoes of a person who's like, efficiency sucks right now. What are they trying to say? Because I just don't understand what they mean when they say that.
Well, you say they, you're talking about.
Lampkin is saying it in this instance, but he's not alone. Like I have heard others.
I don't know if he isn't alone. I don't actually agree. I don't agree with him on that point either. Just similar to Sam. I think I'm not hearing anything like that. Here's actually, I'll take my brother's company, and I won't say what company. We were talking about this because he works for a financial institution, and he's all about crypto right now. Crypto like had a massive boom for him in January. They like upped their financial forecast 200% because of crypto last month, and they're hiring like crazy. And I asked him this. I was like, "Do you guys talk about profitability or if like how you're growing sustainably? This doesn't feel sustainable." And he said, "No, we're just trying to ride the wave right now." And I think that's probably what Lemkin is talking to, is like this idea that we're riding waves, and AI is like the wave that is being centered. But I feel like there's other pockets in it. I don't think SaaS is one of those pockets right now. Like I'm just not. I'm still really, really heads down focused on efficiencies in the business and continuing it. I saw a trend line of CAC, and I saw a trend line of our burn rate and burn multiple that we're doing for the next quarter. Guess what it looks like over the last 2 years?
Beautiful.
Down and to the right. Yeah,
Beautiful.
that's all I'm focused on. And I haven't heard many founders and CEOs not focused on that. So I disagree, Lemkin.
Well, it also seems like if the promise of a technology by nature is supposed to be deflationary, so if new powerful technology is coming, then shouldn't we be thinking about how that makes us more efficient, which is the promise of it. Like when we talk about AI, we're talking about how we won't need as many people, and there's certain things that cost us $100 to do today that'll cost us $1 to do, and we can do these things better and we can do more of them. So if that's the promise, then how can an investor and a thought leader then say, well, forget all of that stuff, let's just throw fuel on fire, ride this wave party time? Like it doesn't make any sense.
Because Lemkin isn't he is not. I feel like he's the messenger, not the actual operator of the person.
I don't know about that. He's pushing an agenda. His agenda is he runs a fund, and I think what he's saying is don't come into the board meeting and say you're going to grow 30% with 10% operating margins. He wants 50% burning 10%. Like I think his point is grow as quickly as you can, and I do disagree with him, but on the margin, because I think everything we're talking about, which is I'm just not in a position to do that anyway, but I also think that I hope we've learned some lessons from 2020 and 2021. I don't think the market is as heated as that anyway. I think the fundamental point that he's making is like, hey, which is what we've talked about a lot. There are winners and losers being defined. If you're losing right now, it's not the market or the broadly defined market. It's not the macro market. The macro market is, in this particular moment, it's probably volatile and up and down, and that means that there's opportunity, and you can win in this opportunity. You can make an impact. There are waves. There are waves to be ridden. It is not a completely flat sea. And that part, I definitely agree with him. And I guess the other thing is related. Like, I was one of the, for the past couple of months, I've been saying, like, what's the future of VC if everybody can build software so cheap? And, and these markets aren't, like, if you don't need a lot of capital and you're building point solutions or, I don't know, some kind of commodity product that doesn't maybe have like a massive possible TAM, like what is the role of venture capital? But particularly if the capital requirements of building a company are very, very small. But now I'm surprised. I don't know if I'm surprised I said that. I think go-to-market is going to be as expensive as ever and will continue to be expensive, even if there's efficiencies in parts of it. We'll just use those efficiencies to hire more salespeople because of what Jason said, which is that like our investors are pushing for aggressive growth. And so I don't think it's going to be like that much. It's going to be cheaper to build software, but I don't think it's going to be cheaper to build a company, or it's not that much cheaper. But beyond that, there's going to be lots and lots of companies, and VCs are going to be necessary to pick winners. And what struck me was Tomas saying with us a couple weeks ago, like he thinks the markets are going to be bigger. I think that's really interesting. I think that there's a lot happening that I think it's really hard to predict the future, obviously. But I think this is it's hard to predict the future, but we know the future is happening. And we know that like major big new markets will probably be built in ways that we haven't anticipated. That feels like a good formula for VC.
Well, to respond to like the messenger piece on Lemkin, I think maybe to clarify that he's more projecting. I think what you said, Sam. I mean, he sees it. We know he's on the board of owner.com. Kyle has talked about their tremendous growth and talked about it in what industry they're in. They're in restaurants. The amount of marketing spend and dollars in that we know is very, very expensive. So I would assume there's some level of projection around that. The thing that I think is interesting is that Kyle, you talk to him, they're working on it being a science. And how do you ensure you get in front of restaurants in more of a scientific way? They're out competing from a competition standpoint. So even though their marketing CAC might be high, I have no idea what it is. It's probably a lot lower on the competitive side. So I think that there's very competitive markets where this actually still makes a lot of sense because the TAM is still quite massive to be able to do so.
Some thoughts. I think it's really dangerous to listen to venture capitalists without taking a lot of nuance into account. If you look at their deployment strategy, it's a power law game, meaning that if I made 10 investments, I need one to be a home run, one to be okay. The rest can just die and it doesn't really matter. And so that's the game that they're playing. So the advice they're giving is essentially related to this approach that they take, meaning that, yes, for everybody that reads that post that efficiency doesn't matter, there will be these companies that will fly at certain rate where the prioritization of growth over free cash flow will be far different and in favor of growth than for anyone else in the economy. And those companies will raise at massive valuations. Clay is a perfect example of that, right? They raised at a $1-something billion valuation. Their revenue has been 10xing, 6xing, just they're a rocket ship right now. And so when an investor looks at that company, they say, okay, you can be a little bit inefficient on the margin side because your growth justifies it right now. Let's capture this market. I will fund you to be able to play that game. But for everybody else in the market, if you play that game, but you haven't unlocked that type of product market fit, you will drive your company off a cliff. And I think what happens is we look at the advice from all these investors who have big platforms, and everybody takes it as an advice to them. But it's most likely not for you. If you're not driving a rocket ship right now, that advice is not for you. Take his tactical advice on go-to-market and everything else, but you're better off listening to somebody from General Atlantic or Marlin Equity or some other PE fund that's talking about businesses that are not part of that small cohort that are flying. For those businesses, the prioritization of growth over free cash flow is still in favor of growth. The delta is just more limited between those two things. And I think this is what people sometimes don't understand when they are looking at our thought leaders, is you kind of have to understand what game they're playing to understand which part of their advice to really take into account and which part of their advice to not take into account, because it might destroy you and your company.
I mean, I think that's the fundamental premise of venture capital, to your point, Asad, is that the constraint to growth is capital. And therefore, if I give you more capital, you can grow more quickly. And, Jason runs a fund. I mean, I heard, and he'll be on the show. I think he'll be on the show in March. That's when he can come on. But, I think there's a counter narrative. Like, there are these opposing narratives. One of them is, and it's related exactly to your point, Asad, about like the relevance of venture capital in the ecosystem. And there's, I'm doing a LinkedIn Live or something with Adam Robinson later today, and he is the exemplar of bootstrapped funding.
Is he asking you for advice on how to steal your business model and do it himself?
I don't care. It's like being, SUNY Binghamton stealing the business model of Harvard, theoretically.
Wow. Wow.
That's so good.
Wow.
That's so good.
Last week, Sam comparing himself to Jesus Christ. This week, Harvard University.
That was so good. I love that.
I was just saying, like, anybody can create a community. It doesn't, that's what we're going to talk about, because I think him and, anyway, we'll talk about it today. But the point is this: there's a narrative of like bootstrapping, and there's people, and Jason Lemkin is trying to talk to the people in the middle that aren't sure which direction they want to take their business. Do they want to go balls to the wall and try to, burn through their capital and put themselves at the mercy of investors, but really try to grow very, very quickly? Or do they want to be more measured? And his point is, I'm not paying you to be more measured. And, that's a
very fair point.
That's a fair perspective, and you have to decide for yourself if you're the CEO.
The confusion happens when you don't know what game you're playing.
Mm.
And so you start like doing things that are, so you're going and trying to raise from a venture capitalist, but you are not venture fundable. And that's like a disconnect that we see all the time, right?
Yeah, of course. Like the number of people, I don't know, there's a class of person. I'm actually, I think I'm a nice person. I mean, I think I'm doing my best, but there's a certain kind of person. They're like, I've been debating, should I raise or not? And I'm like, nobody will invest in. What are you talking about?
There are other ways to waste time that could be more fun, more uplifting ways to waste hours of your life.
People acting like it's their choice. It's not a choice. Nobody's giving you money, period. So no, I guess you're not raising. I don't think you should.
There is the other side of it, though, that is that you've raised and you did it at a period of high valuation where that expectation that we're talking about that Lemkin has.
That's exactly right, AJ. I think you're the person he's talking to.
Yeah, me. And I'm still going to disagree with him, because I think that what Asad said is it's true. If you don't know you can't have your board telling you what type of business you need to be in. And if I'm sitting here saying, I'm looking at the tea leaves in the market and I'm seeing the trends in what our business is doing, and I feel like the profitable, efficient, and growth, even though that might be tied to more bootstrap or services business, no, there's fund Series A, Series B funded companies that are doing the exact same thing, and they need to be okay, but they need to be opinionated and strongly tied to what that 3, 4, 5-year term vision is going to look like from a growth standpoint. Because at the end of the day, if you don't understand the economics of your business, you're dead in the water. If you don't understand in 3 years what that's going to return is going to look like for your stakeholders, for your investors, for your cap table, you're dead in the water. So.
Yeah. I find that it's unreasonable to say to founders that you have raised venture when the market was hot. And we also, as investors, made some mistakes at the time. That was the community that was saying macro doesn't matter. And so we gave you money. We gave you money at a wild valuation. But now you must play the game we tell you to play at any point when we tell you to play it. And it's like, 1 second, relax. You bought 5-10% of the business. You have 5-10% of a voice in the equation. I don't got to do what you tell me to do, because what you're telling me to do is that the only game to play is to try to get 100x, 1000x return on what we're doing. maybe I'm actually now going to adjust my thinking and go for a 20, 30x return. And I can play a very different game to get that return. And it's my choice. I still own most of this business. So nice point of view, I'm not going to do it. It takes a lot of strength of character to do that. But that is a legitimate choice that founders have right now that I think sometimes they don't realize that they have, because the board can be as aggressive as
sometimes they don't have it, to be honest. I mean, there's sometimes you own 10% of the company, but you've got some kind of preference or redemption right, or if something doesn't
Protective
happen,
provisions.
like you can force some kind of share buyback at a certain, who knows what's on the cap table. But I agree with you, Asad, that fundamentally the rights of the cap table are the blockchain. Like they are the defining bylaws of the organization.
The hole that a lot of founders, CEOs find themselves in from time to time, and I've been in this spiral before, is trying to appease the board and try to figure out what they want to hear versus what is you're doing to actually drive things forward. And so you got to pick a lane. Don't pick both.
Is this just what happens with age, that we stop caring about all these other things and become very transparent and all, like what you're just saying, right? Like, and the younger me used to appease a lot. Now I just don't have the patience for it. And I might be more off-putting than I was when I was young.
You don't have a boss. You truly don't have a boss.
I do not have a boss.
Sam barely has one. And doesn't
they have to approve the budget. We just sent them, we're late on it, but we sent them, the 2025 plan, and they have to approve it. I mean, I care what they think. I'm the one that went out and independently added to my board without having to.
I appreciate that. We talked about this as co-founders, me having co-founders last week. I actually do like the kind of the downward pressure and to have myself help hold myself accountable with the board. So I appreciate it too.
I do think that, going back to the markets conversation, I think the market has always gotten bigger over time. And so the overall market will get bigger. And there will be segments within that will be new, that we didn't know exist. Roberge made this really smart point when he was on last year, where he said that there were some businesses that were not buildable pre-AI. The unit economics didn't make sense. And now they might make sense. If you think about a really transactional product, maybe with humans leading go-to-market, it wasn't possible. The CAC wasn't possible. But we have noticed that if you think about AI and its implementation within go-to-market, it's very different based on the sales motion. SMB is most likely where you will see the most disruption from AI, and that's really exciting. Whereas on mid-market and enterprise, less so. It will drive productivity, but it's not going to take over. Like, I don't see Procter & Gamble buying something for many millions of dollars without talking to human beings, just like I don't see investors deploying capital without meeting the human founder, or the human raising capital without meeting the investor. I just don't see that world coming together. Maybe I'm wrong. But on the SMB side, there were certain products that were just too transactional to sell, and maybe that comes up now, and that becomes a really fun big market. So there will be those situations, and other markets will become unfundable. That's kind of how markets evolve. There will be a place for venture, but their game will evolve a little bit. Like they'll have to twist and turn to keep up with the times, and that's going to be the most interesting thing. They're kind of dealing with the same thing all of us are dealing with. This is now very much a moment in time where we have to twist and turn, change and adjust to be viable and relevant for the next few decades. And these decisions and moves are really hard to get right. But if you don't get them right, you will be in the graveyard of irrelevance. And if you get them right, it'll be fantastic.
I can't remember if Lemkin mentioned in his post, but what we really truly need is exits. Like all of this is in service of liquidity. And these are all great to say all of these things, but it feels like it's prognosticate, just telling the future. I can't think of a word.
Prognosticate.
Thank you, Sam. Losing my words this morning. Prognosticating and not having a real clear glimpse of what it looks like, because we just need exits.
What choices does a person who wants to build a 100-year-old business have? Because private equity wants to flip it in 3 to 5. Venture wants you to exit at some point. Like, what if somebody has a grander vision than that? We're so built around the investor model, their incentive model with their LPs kind of defines how we think about business building. And now exits has become such a common thing that we're all so comfortable with this idea. But back in the day, people had grander visions than an exit in the next 10 years. I feel like those people don't have
Well,
many
I
options.
think private equity, that firm might want to sell it in 3, 5, or 7 years, but they sell it oftentimes to another private equity firm.
I mean, the brand persists.
Yeah, World 50 has traded hands, I think, 3 or 4 times from Pamlico. I think the most recent owners, Morgan Stanley Capital Partners, like
interesting. Yeah,
but I feel like you have to. I feel like that's where the public markets are just such an important piece to this.
Yeah,
like the public markets help serve lasting brands, and you're not. I mean, OpenAI, I guess, would be the closest to something that we'll see where that goes. I mean, LLMs, as we saw with last week, might just be the commodity, and I think OpenAI is definitely doing its job in innovating on the UI and innovating on how models are used and commercialized. But at the same time, I'm not sure I see the lasting software brand Klaviyo right now. What they went public.
I think, listen, if you ask me, Clay's a pretty powerful brand, I have to say. I mean, it's tiny. It's not Klaviyo. It's not
they've done a phenomenal job.
No, it's all word of mouth. I mean, they're
fascinating. They serve demand gen people, but they got branding right so perfectly. And usually people that obsess about demand gen have a disconnect with brand. I think this is a big issue in the CMO community right now, where for 10, 15 years, demand gen was the main thing. And that's where the muscles are and that's where the comfort is. And we've crossed this chasm where the ecosystem is so competitive, where brand marketing is necessary. But now you have demand gen experts trying to do brand marketing, and it's horrendous and it's horrible and it's uncomfortable. And it's going to lead to some real disruption in the CMO world, where you'll have like the CMOs that, unless they make this transition properly, their careers are going to be in precarious positions. But it will create opportunity for the up and comers who learn and adjust faster because they're younger and they have less ingrained ideas to drive up their careers maybe faster than before. But with all that said, I think Clay has just done a phenomenal job on branding.
I think brands are fundamentally driven by the founder CEO. Because I think you can hire a big time CMO to try and change a brand, but if they don't have the full support of the CEO, then they're just going to be on an island on their own, and then it will just be colors and slogans and not like the true, authentic, emotional connection that you have with the company.
Which also goes back to the PE piece of it, which is a PE buys a company, and it just look at like Drift. Drift is a good example of a brand that just
has drifted into irrelevance.
Got destroyed when PE bought it and founders left the organization.
I mean, I haven't mentioned who. That's got to be like a media fly company.
Actually, SalesLoft. Vista bought them like 5 years ago, and they merged into SalesLoft.
MediaFly was definitely part of that. They were trying to get
a fascinating strategy. Let me buy out of product market fit commodity instances of top tier. Sure, Gong's great. I'll get Exec Vision.
Oh man, Exec Vision.
Horrible products.
I chose Exec Vision over Gong. I know Steve and David.
We all make bad decisions sometimes. I bought jeans that were very skinny ones back in the day. It doesn't mean I was right. I
wear skinny jeans. I think that's okay. You have nice legs, Asad. I
do have nice legs.
They do nice. Now. You can do it in Europe, I guess. Sam's allowed to do it in Europe.
I just think it's clothes that fit. I mean, let's all just wear clothes that fit.
Clothes that fit, yeah. I'm more on the slim than skinny now. Like skinny was really like leggings, whereas slim.
You were like super skinny with like.
Asad, you wore leggings? You were around.
They were like I had a pair that was like leggings. I remember Sherry was like, "You're not leaving the house like that." I was like, "Oh, I might have misshopped. I made some mistakes right there. It's okay. It happens."
Are you being paid what you're worth? Pavilion's compensation report has become an industry standard for go-to-market leaders to benchmark their compensation, equity, and other employment terms. We're refreshing the report for 2025 and need your input. To get early access to the results, take the anonymous survey at joinpavilion.com/comp. That's COMP, or click the link in the show notes.
I think when it comes to what we're talking about, which is navigating this period in time, one of the things we're trying to do is balance where we are going to have to spend more money with cost savings on other sides. We just went through this exercise to figure out how viable is search engine marketing on Google for us anymore. And just this last week, we made a decision that we will not do any search engine marketing anymore. It is a dead channel. And that was a channel that we used to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on. So now we're going through this interesting exercise of saying, if we're not spending those hundreds of thousands there, where do we spend them now? And so a lot is changing. And one of the things the three of us are going through is hiring in LATAM, but we're doing it differently for different reasons. And I thought it might be interesting for the audience to more of an operational part of the conversation, why we're doing this, what our individual thoughts are around it, how we're operationalizing it, etc. And so maybe we can each go and kind of share our thoughts and chat through it. AJ, why are you doing this?
I'm the newbie in this room and doing it.
You have the freshest ideas.
Started with me. Well, first off, I think actually you are one of the main drivers to this, Asad. We're hearing about like the recruiting and how recruiting has changed over time. I started to some of the people that you've worked with, Kyle Norton, Andrea. I've started just like connecting with and seeing what works and what doesn't, and they've brought up LATAM pretty recently, and it's just something I've become interested in as we've looked at ways to help support and resource our CS teams. That's the area that is causing the most pain for us, because in this profitable and efficient growth, it's really challenging to figure out ways to not have to grow headcount, but also be more efficient and service our customers well in a white glove way. So I actually had a really good friend from the company Paperspace that got bought by DigitalOcean. He built out a full CS team about 5 years ago in Mexico. And so I started talking to a handful of folks that he had hired and recruited. And what I've now realized is that we are way past the point where globalization is a thing. But I think where we are right now is that this idea of having a pretty technical product and a customer facing person that has like the experience, speaks English at a native level, those two areas have crossed, right? Like it's actually now acceptable to do that, where I think even just 3 years ago it was probably still a little bit of a challenge. So this is just new for me. We are
Have you tried to forecast? I find that the P&L of a business is its blueprint. And so what will this do to your P&L? Like,
this is where that started. Yeah, we went through the pod structure. We basically went through every piece of the cost of goods sold and the COGS, and then just on gross margin and what it did for servicing accounts in our CX team, and looked at areas for improvement and efficiency and opportunity. And this one stuck out like that was the biggest opportunity. As our business continues to grow, like we just can't sustainably keep having a pot of 4 US based folks, for example. Like it's just not possible. So we're going to have to change that. It breaks. And so that was the catalyst for us to do this.
Sam, what are you thinking with this?
I think what you think, Asad, which is we've talked for a long time about, does it matter if the whole Spitz argument, it's like it doesn't make any sense for him to be complaining, not that he's like personally complaining about like GTM efficiency if Salesforce is throwing off gobs and gobs of cash. Like then what does declining GTM efficiency mean? So how does that relate to this question? Because we're going to take support and put it offshore. And, as I've mentioned before, like if you're going to be a W-2 employee of Pavilion, you need to be able to manage a project, and you need to be able to be strategic in your thinking, and you need to be able to use tools that are at your disposal which include AI, but is not just AI, because Zapier and Make are not really AI. They're automation, but they're, it's a world in the age of APIs, like everything can be connected. But you need to be able to use all of those tools to drive a project forward. And if you can't do that, then and so when we looked at our support function, we're beginning to staff it offshore because like a lot of the, 95% of all the support tickets we get are, where's my password? How do I update my billing information? Stuff that like better workflows and better automation, better UX, and human beings somewhere else can help manage. But the other part, again, like that opens up, and this is why my head is swimming about VC, because I just think there's all kinds of new businesses that we're not articulating that will be built. But for example, once you start moving things offshore, then all of a sudden your concept of what scalable customer support is can evolve. If you can hire 4 people for the cost of 1, then you can probably call all your customers all the time. And so all of a sudden, this idea that like, maybe not Citibank, who I hope, I hope that they die and that they people hurt them, because Citibank's a piece of shit. But other than Citibank, my point is like, what if your idea is about how you need everything to be like a bot? Maybe some things do need to be bots, but for example, at Pavilion, we could build an 8 to 10 person support team for the cost of 2 people in the U.S. Okay, so if you have 8 to 10 people for a business of our size, you could ask each of them to make $50 to $100 a day just to members, just to say, what are you doing? What are you working on? How are you? Have you tried this course? Have you thought about that? So I just think a lot opens up once you improve your operating efficiency and lower your OpEx. And I think that to the point of whatever is it, Jeffins law, Jevons law. What do you do with that money? Well, and to Lemkin's point, like, do I want to stockpile cash? I mean, I want 20 or 30%. Let's say I want 30% EBITDA margins, but I don't want 60% EBITDA margins. I mean, I don't. I want to take some portion of that. I want to hire more salespeople wherever they are. And if I can hire 5 of them, then I'll hire 5 of them. And I want to invest more in the channels that do work for us. LinkedIn advertising works well. So we're going to increase our spend on LinkedIn this month. And if I can have more operating efficiency by offshoring support, then maybe I can pay more. If you look at my P&L, what jumps out at you besides Slack is chapter head. It really almost looks like a medium margin multi-level marketing business because we pay out so much to chapter heads. Well, could I do more events? Maybe I could have more chapter heads receiving something. But how do I redistribute that capital? But the point is, like, I agree with Lemke. Like, what do I'm not trying to grow a ton this year, but like in the next couple of years, I do want to grow a lot. And whatever I want it to be good margin. But if you're asking me, to the trade-off, like I'll sacrifice the margin to a certain extent for growth. I want to be $50 million in a couple of years, as you know.
You're trying to Sam, what that margin to deploy it into growth, essentially.
Which is the whole argument that you made.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I mean, Sam, it sounds like what you're doing is you're being a founder CEO. You're looking for places in the business that you can leverage areas for growth. You can look at the trade-offs, look at the costs, and making the decision and moving on. I mean, I think that's what this amounts to. This is a big piece, and it's a big because what I had to think about for trade-offs, though, Asad, was culture. Honestly, that was one area where I was like, okay, well, moving international, like regardless of what you're doing or who it is, your culture is going to change as an organization, and you just need to make sure you have the right onboarding and the right ramp and the right pieces in place to make it actually effective. Because sure, that 1 to 5, you could effectively or theoretically talk to every customer, but what do those conversations sound like? And are they in the vein of the brand that you've created and that you've built over that long period of time? That's why it's so important. Like the outsourced SDR, every time it comes up, I just like am just like
twice a week on the CRO.
Twice a week. But the main part that I always have issues with is what are you doing to your brand? Do you have a brand that you can actually support that like type of outsourcing of SDR? Most likely not.
But sometimes you you step in for your CS person that's out or what have you, and you realize, holy crap, the Americans that, the people, onshore people that are destroying my brand already. It can't get much worse.
We can't go further down from it. So
they are taking forever to respond, making mistakes, not following up, not using their brain.
Your CC to the email, they didn't
like
answer.
A robot. It's like, if that's the baseline, well, I'll take that for 1/4 of the cost.
5 hours has happened. You haven't responded to this email.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. So we just made the second offer to an individual that we're hiring in LATAM. Our strategy is similar but slightly different. So we're doing it for the same reason, which is I want margins to increase by a certain amount over the next couple of years. And I think that if this strategy works, then if 1/4 of my company is based in LATAM, I'll gain 5% in margin. Not more, because we're trying to do it a bit differently. So what we're doing is we're going after more experienced people. We've hired one from McKinsey. We're just hiring somebody from Deal. I think by the time this podcast is out, the offer should be done and over with, so I can speak about it. And so these are more experienced people, and we're putting them in our most important roles with tons of training and support. And we ran a process where we just ran it across North America and LATAM at the same time. We said, let's just see. We're not compromising on quality. Let's see what we can get in either places. And the LATAM people just outperformed the American people, partly because for the same price, we could go after a little bit more experience. So we'd go after somebody who's 3 or 4 years at McKinsey versus we'd have to go after people. We couldn't hire McKinsey's 4 or 5 year employees over here. And so we've hired them and we're paying them a competitive base salary for that area. But what we're doing is we're giving them the same variable that everybody here has. And so if it works, then those people will be making doctor, lawyer type of money over there, which I think in the next couple of years will give us certain leverage when we're trying to hire, because we're paying more than the average company that moves into LATAM pays these people. And it still works out quite nicely, where if 1/4 of my workforce was there, I still gain 5% in margin, which I think is fantastic.
I really like that, by the way, Asad. I don't know if that's super common to do, but because the variable is already baked into the costs of the business.
Yeah. Everybody was telling me to look at the OTE that is standard in that market and pay 10% more. And I was like, but why not just pay a lot more and then just become the most attractive place in the next couple of years? Like, I'm going to be doing this for a few decades, so I'm thinking years out. I'm like, if in 3 or 4 years it becomes known that this is the place where you can out-earn local investment bankers and lawyers and doctors, then why not, right? That should give us some type of leverage over time.
Let me ask you, is the variable like 75% of the base in their country then? Is it, or is it something like 75-25?
Like 70-30.
70, so it's 70 variable, 30 base.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And what are you doing? 50-50 or?
Over here,
we haven't decided.
Like 50-50.
Yeah, that's wild. We haven't decided what we're going to do. Do you have a variable, Sam?
For people in, 80-20 mostly, 90-10.
Variable to base?
No, base to variable.
Yeah, I think Asad's was flipped though. Asad's was variable
for
to base.
Support, they're going to be support, so they're
not doing variable.
Yeah. It is a little weird, I have to say, when you're doing all hands and stuff and talking about everybody being an owner and all of your US employees are like on a bonus plan and then but it is what it is.
Well, actually, tactical question, serious question. And Asad, you would know this, employment of record versus international contractor.
International contractor.
I think these employer of record companies feels a bad company.
Yeah, well, I just took some of one of their really good people.
They do.
I just find it like, what am I paying for? I don't know. If I can just pay them directly,
they try to threaten you. They're like, if you don't work with us, you'll be out of compliance and you could be sued for $1 million. And then you do a little bit like for where I'm filing a digital nomad visa, which is perfectly within, it's perfectly legal. And Deal's like, yeah, you're not eligible for a digital nomad visa. You have to do this, this, and that. And I'm like, just do a bit of basic research. Ask the lawyer. They're like, no, you can definitely, we're doing a digital nomad visa.
What a digital nomad visa is for. It's like for you.
But I've heard like there was a note that said they can't take place in all hands. They
nonsense. This is
I think
absolute
that's
nonsense. Like, I think you pay them as a contractor, they're happy, it's normal for them. Like, this isn't like you have to convince them how to do it. Like, you're like, hey, I'm just going to send you this. They're like, fantastic. You give them whatever vacations you have for people over here. You give them all the benefits of being an employee for your organization. You just pay them as a contractor. And we're flying them in for onboarding. I think that'll be fantastic. The things I learned through this process was, I have this belief that talent is not country specific. Like, if you're just thinking about talent on its own, there's talent everywhere. But there are some nuances that we were thinking about. Like, what about delivery? Like, will they be able to talk and articulate in a way that is going to be really compelling? And then there's experience. Like, what have you done with your talent up till now? So the bet is that over there you can get really high talent and probably go after people with a little bit more experience than you could afford over here for the same amount. And the big question I had was around delivery. I found that the people over there, when I was talking to them, the delivery was fantastic. I have an accent, but I've never been off-putting. I think when I used to cold call people, they used to be like, what the hell? What does this guy sounds a bit different? It used to give me some memorability. And I think they had that as well. The thing that I found that I hadn't thought of was they're a little bit harder. Their life there has been harder. So the characters are a bit more interesting and hard. And I like that. I think that you meet a lot of the people that are entering the workforce right now in North America, and they've lived these like helicopter parent type of lives. They're very soft. And I think that becomes a bit of a problem. And I like the hardness of the people over there. I'm excited for that to come into the organization.
It's funny how, markets move, because Asad, you are part of the force that is going to soften these people.
Yeah, probably.
Asad's like, you're super hard. Let me pay you 2x what anybody else would pay you and make your life super comfortable.
Buy a Ferrari at 30 and then like, that's so true.
So in the future, we can't hire anyone that worked at STA. They lived in a totally different world.
I know they're just if it says STA on their business card, they have.
If it says STA on the side of if it says STA on the side of their Lamborghini, we can't hire them.
I don't know what this honest day's work. Those people.
I love that. I want to see that. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to talk about today was, Sam, you made a really interesting post on sales methodologies.
I did?
Yes.
What did I say?
Sam, it was in the docket. I even read this.
So the post is basically that 69% of reps did not hit target in 2024, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And you made a point that the bar for excellence has been raised, but an average is not going to work anymore. And then the downstream point that you were making was that it's essential that companies follow and implement and follow sales methodologies. It's one of the first principles that we teach at Pavilion. And so if you're trying to be good at go-to-market, you necessarily need one. It doesn't actually matter which one, but you need something.
Yes.
You were trying to spiced as theirs, right? You were trying to it, but you said all of them can be good as long as you implement them.
I agree with that. I agree with what I wrote.
Another company that's doing
it represented to me, I agree.
Okay. What do you think as we move into a world of AI? The question I have is that I find that when we hire for mid-market and enterprise sales, there's this interesting challenge where if you sit down with sales teams that are and the sellers who are really good, and you talk to them, they're interesting conversations. They tell you all these stories about their deals. And one of the things you get out of that is most of the best deals and the most interesting deals and the most meaningful deals require a little bit of like out of the box thinking and creativity to get those deals done on mid-market and enterprise. But you also need people that can follow a methodology and be disciplined over there. And I find that you have to compromise in one or the other when you hire the rep, because a person who's highly disciplined and will follow that methodology in a meticulous way might not be scoring as high on the creativity side. And it's like, what do I compromise on? I wonder if AI offers us the ability to prioritize the creativity more, because the adherence of the methodology will be less on the rep and more guided by the AI. Like the administrative part of it will be done for them. And even as they're moving things from one stage to the other, the thoughts and the questions that they have to ask to know if it's time to move to that stage will be done in a very efficient way. And so it makes the implementation of methodology is easier and kind of gives us the ability to rethink the type of people that we hire into these teams. When you hear that, Sam, where does your mind go with that?
I disagree with the premise. I actually don't
tell me.
think that like there's this group of highly creative, unstructured, undisciplined people that are brilliant salespeople, but don't adhere to any process. I maybe they exist. Maybe you've met them.
Yeah.
But my experience is that the best salespeople are the best because they combine those attributes.
Yeah.
So, and I'm thinking of Aaron Leader. Aaron Leader is highly creative. He's always putting these music videos on LinkedIn, and he's very empathetic, and he was in a band, but he was also the manager of that band when he was in the band. And he was the person that managed the recording schedule. And if you look in our dashboards and you look at the things that require manual entry, who is the person where you never, ever, ever have to ask them to update their data, where you never have to say, where are you on the month and what's your forecast? And he always knows exactly, and it's Aaron. And Aaron's just an entrepreneur, he likes this structure of he gets to operate with a lot of autonomy. He serves a broader purpose and he makes a lot of money. So now, on the other hand, to your point about what I'm thinking of as you're talking is, can AI help us become better people? I think probably. I think the whole point of sales methodology, I think the whole point of all of it is not for top performers. I think all of these systems are for your average performers and getting another 10 to 20% productivity improvement from people that are fine but could be a little better. I think the great people don't really need a lot of, they'll use it anyway because they're great. They're going to find ways to incorporate new tech. So to answer your question, yeah, I do think that AI will help. I think in-moment coaching for dumb people that don't know what questions to ask and the AI saying, ask this question is better. It's going to be better.
Yeah.
And go
I
ahead.
really like what you
I fully agree with you. I think you have to do some level of critical thinking with that. You can't just have the AI ask this question. But what is interesting, I know we're going to talk about it, is research. Like research done is just totally going to change the game. And it feels like every month, we used to have these cycles where it was like every few months there was another up leveling of something on the LLM. Every week.
It's insane.
Every week. But research, and I know you both probably saw Dharmesh's post on research yesterday as well. It is a massive game changer for us as founders and CEOs of just how we think. I mean, for investors, this is Tomas Tung's like jam for sure. But like, this is awesome. It's really cool stuff. I know you guys have played around with it.
This is like meaningful. Like I played around with it a lot yesterday. I asked it to write a brief for an upcoming client meeting. I asked it to write a brief almost like a Bain consultant would do: competitive analysis, SWOT on the competitors, the capital deployment in the sector, technology trends, people trends. And it like went away and thought for a while and came back with what was stunning. Like I was shocked. I genuinely, I went into that call probably knowing that business a little bit better than a lot of the other people on that call. It was just shocking. And so it makes you really wonder what the implementation of this is going to look like in our organizations. I think our people are going to be so much more better prepared for every external conversation they're having than they've ever been prepared before. Like Sam, if one of your people are going to speak to a CRO, they can in minutes now not just know the companies that person worked at, but understand that career arc a little bit. Because to understand the career arc, you don't need the logos and the names. You need to know what those companies did and what type of journeys they had and which part of that journey this person was in, what that experience might have been like, what was the competitive landscape there. Like all of this stuff that would be highly unreasonable to ask a human being to prepare for one meeting for is now minutes. It was shocking to me.
I had it first. I had to use ExpressVPN. I think did we talk about the bottle cap thing? It's just like Europe. The produce is great. I have to say the fruit is good. Amazing. The tech, not so much. But the point is, so I ExpressVPN'd into ChatGPT so I could use deep research. And I share, it's like first of all, watching it think is just freaking wild.
Insane.
Yeah.
It is wild.
It's like you understand your own brain a little bit.
I just think it's like so many things. Listen, we got to be aware of bot breath. We got to be aware of like crappy generic copy. But that said, like I uploaded my investor weekly updates into ChatGPT and asked it to like write my weekly update because I was brain dead and it was Sunday night late after like having some relatives in town. And it just it reformatted the sections and like I didn't ask it to. It's just like, this is probably the better way to write this. I was like, yeah, that's a lot better. That's a lot better than the way that I was writing it. And I think I don't know. It's just the jobs that it's like, what is the role of the human? And I guess what I was thinking as you were talking, Asad, is that I'm really, really glad I don't run a software company. Like, I'm really, really glad that I don't run like a SaaS workflow
compensation management tool
No,
that helps
listen,
with commission.
It's going to put, listen, I mean, I think frankly, AJ, well, first of all, you have some time. But if you're super SMB focused, if you're running a software SMB platform, I mean, yeah, you can like, we're heavy into AI. We built a new AI solution. I hear you. But I think like the AI first company has but if you're mid-market, which I believe CodaPath is, I think it'll push a lot of people into the enterprise because enterprises still don't move as quickly. And at least you have some time to manage that revenue stream. But my point is, I'm like really glad that I run Pavilion right now because like human connection and the need to discuss this stuff is not going anywhere.
I think the analog world is where the highest alpha sits over like a couple of decades now. So I think like if we were looking at the three of our businesses and saying which is the most secure bet, we just know the three types of businesses, which bet is the most secure bet 20 years in, I would bet on the community. But I would say that I think these technologies are offering companies that are existing software companies the ability to change at a pace that we don't know from before. There's this preconceived notion that established companies twist and turn slower. And I do think that the larger the business gets, there's something I've been thinking about a lot as I've been working with some multi-billion-dollar businesses is, wow, the donkeys running around these companies is just wild. It is like, as you gain scale, the quality of talent, especially at that like director level, it is not fantastic. And I think what ends up happening is there's some companies where it's exceptional. Like there's one $30 billion business that we're working with right now where the people are just fantastic. But then you can see that part of that culture is optimizing, obsessing about that because they understand that the natural trajectory is as you gain size and scale, the quality of people goes down in the organization. And it's actually the product and its strength and the distribution strengths that are driving them forward and forward. But the people quality is going down. Hence, when you meet a company that's got great people at scale, like I don't think we understand how special that is. So we look at some of the older, larger businesses in our history and we say, well, innovators' dilemma killed a lot of companies and it's hard to change and all of that. And I think the very large businesses, it's really hard to do it. I think companies that are more in the like 50 to 300 person range, I think this technology offers them a way to twist and turn at a speed that we haven't necessarily thought possible before, and also innovate on the product in a way that's I think magical. Like if you think about deep research being integrated into QuarterPath, QuarterPath is reliant on the quality of the end customer that's using it. And obviously QuarterPath is unique where all of its customers are brilliant, but other companies in the space might be dealing with individuals on the other side that are not that smart and not that strategic. And so the implementation of the thing is done at a bad level because of that. Well, now this technology can like bridge that a little bit. And I think that's really powerful. It's underappreciated that now the caliber of your end customer matters a little bit less in terms of the quality of implementation and usage. And I think that's really powerful.
I think,
Well,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm still stewing over that. Sam said it just can't run a software business. It's just not.
You're the one that
You
said you
say
wouldn't
it
want
all
to
the
be.
time.
I know. The thing that I was thinking about No, I'm just stewing. I'm so angry over here. I'm done. No, the thing I was thinking about was watching it think yesterday when I was asking it about, like, hey, how could QuotaPath run this specific AI thing? I don't forget what the prompt was, but it on the side it said, like, I'm curious about competitors' AI for commissions, which seems to mirror other competitors' AI concept. This makes me think about their approach in commission management. I was like, "Whoa, that's so smart! What a clever little doggy you are." What would you say, Sam? Clever little. Sam has a catchphrase that I just tried to pull up and I forgot what it
Yeah,
says.
I don't know. Maybe like a good boy, like a good
He's
boy.
a good boy. He's a
Not a
good
good
boy.
boy.
Okay.
Oh, good
Listen,
boy
we
researchers.
cannot. We are at the point. Roku's basilisk. We should not patronize these things. We should need to be very, very cordial, very professional, very deferential. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
The singularity is
I'm here.
upon
I'm a
us.
supporter of you.
Thank you.
But as far as how it's going to help the product, Asad, I'm not sure yet. I think it's just way too early. I do think of Dharmesh's post around agents and this that we're here, and that he's connecting the bridge to what is actually commercially available to where he thinks the world is going. And I had a lot of traction. I had like 7,000 different engagements
I mean,
on it
you
as
know what I
well.
was thinking about is like, what if we need to build? Maybe we don't, depending on like maybe the meta tags or like the code of the web pages, but like clearly you're going to need to build websites. We're used to websites as marketing fronts, but what they really need to be is like easily indexed by an agent so that the agent can quickly find relevant information. And you're going to have to build like this parallel internet, which is like where the agents can get what they need, so that you're like at the top. Like maybe if an agent can't find your website very easily or can't navigate the pages very easily, so you have to design the website
Jeez.
for agents, not for humans.
This is
We're
very
going
meta
through a
right now.
rebrand right now. So we just like kicked off our rebrand, and it's the first conversation we're having is what's an AI first website now?
Yeah.
Because we're going to spend all this money and do all this thing. I don't want to build something for the previous generation. Like, how do we make it the most relevant for today? The other thing, small point that I found interesting was AI seems to prioritize PR. Blast from the past, Mr. AJ. It seems to prioritize PR. Like if you're trying to research a thing, if there's a PR notification about that company in that space, that gets prioritized. I thought that was really interesting.
I mean, there's just like, this is why I'm just like bullish on VC again, all of a sudden. It's like I'm just trying to think, like there's stuff we're talking on a certain level, almost like the entrenched, but there's a Travis Kalanick out there, and he or she is like, what's the new use case?
Yeah.
What is the new thing that was not possible yesterday that is now possible? And we're because we tend to think linearly, and I just think like there's going to be some really crazy cool companies that are being built.
I also
right
think
now.
it gives you a chance to rethink existing industries. My industry has not seen a lot of innovation in the last 100 or so years that it's existed. The value prop we have is you find us interesting as an exec search company if you believe that the world has changed in the last 20, 30 years because of technology, but this industry hasn't. We believe it can. We think you can do things better and faster, cheaper, while gaining more margin and paying our people better than everyone else in the space. And if that's interesting to you, we're interesting to you. And that is now possible.
Well, I think that internal, that's the culture they're building. So your team believes that as well. So they're thinking about things like this. I just sent you both over text a really interesting snapshot of our searches.
Cool.
And different LLMs over time.
How do you optimize for this?
I have no idea. This was from my director of demand gen. Just sent it to me yesterday.
And of course, taking credit.
It's
like with the increased use of ChatGPT,
you should ask
that is also mentioned more often. That's the same chart for everything.
I literally asked him that though. I was like, "How are you optimizing for this?" And this was just earlier this morning. He hasn't gotten back to me yet, so I'm curious as to what we're actually doing.
He's like, let me go figure it out. Okay, we are at time.
Yeah, how do you want to end today, Asad?
Question of the day.
Oodalali.
Samuel.
Yes.
What is some advice or some gesture of kindness that somebody did for you early on in your career or your life that shaped you as a professional? in a positive way.
Is this in the docket? Should I just have reviewed the docket? That's a pretty big question.
Yeah.
What's a piece of advice? Oh man, I don't know.
Why don't you two think about it and I'll give one, since I've thought about this question.
Yeah, you go.
When I joined STA early on, I could see my productivity was just very different to everybody else's. They were far more productive than me, and I had a lot more ADD than them. And I remember Jamie, who's the founder and one of the owners right now, he was talking to me. I'd had a really good quarter. He said, "What are you optimizing for in the next quarter?" And I was like, "I need to be more productive. This ADD is like, I spend way more hours being equally productive to them in the end result. And so I need to be more efficient. I need to do." And he's like, "Just let me reframe it for you. Maybe that's what your brain needs. It needs to go left and right. Maybe you're talking to a VP of sales and you don't ask 2 questions that are not job specific, but you learn something. And maybe over time, all of that compounds. And what'll happen is you'll see an angle or you'll see something that others can't see. And that might define a company's trajectory and your career's trajectory. So maybe instead of like thinking this is a weakness, you just lean into it and see where it goes. Instead of trying to go and medicate yourself, you say, this might be my superpower. And yes, I'll spend a few more hours than the average person working, but maybe my end will be a little bit cooler and more interesting." And that was an adjustment I did make. It like changed my framing completely. And it defined my career. If there's 1 or 2 pieces of advice that helped to push me in a particular direction, this was one of those.
I love that. I will give 2. Okay, first one, my running partner, Scott Harris, also shout out. Scott just broke off from Brown Harris Stevens, not the same Harris, to launch his own residential real estate business in Manhattan called Magnetic. And he's also got a book coming out this, I think next year or early next year, called The Pursuit of Home, or maybe it's this year. But anyway, but he was on a run with me, and I was complaining. I've shared this story a lot because I found it very valuable.
What year is this, by the way, Sam? Just so we have context.
Probably 2013, 2014. Right around when the ideas for Pavilion began to percolate. And we were running somewhere, and he said, and I was complaining. He's like, "How's it going?" I'm like, "It's not going that well, and this person sucks, and my CEO is an idiot." And he said a very simple question. He said, "Does that help? Does it help?" I said, "Does what help?" He said, "Does always finding that being so hard on yourself, being so negative, like truly asking, like, does it help you? Like, do you get better results by do more people, or do you attract more people to you?" And it was a very useful question because a lot of times negative people think that they're like, I would be more positive if things were more positive, but things are objectively negative. And of course, that's a total BS thing. Like your life is the story that you tell yourself. And so it reframes it away from like, listen, obviously things are actually good. You just don't see it, to whether you think they're good or not, what helps you achieve your result. And I found that was a very useful framing for how to think about negativity before I got to the point of like, it's just an intermediate step to, by the way, if you say you're lucky, you are. If you say you're unlucky, you are. If you say you're happy, you are. It's an intermediate step to that final epiphany of like, my life is a story I tell myself and I can choose what story to tell. But on the journey there, you can say, do my practices help me? Yes or no? What's more helpful, being positive or negative? And I found that really compelling, and I took enough time. So that will be the only example I give. Thank you for asking the question, Asad. AJ, over to you.
We're just left wondering what the second one was that you started with. You said, I've got 2. And then you're like, this is it.
But that one was really good. Like, I like that one.
We'll save the next one for next time. Something that you said, Sam, which before we were talking over text before, just how urgently we get back to our teams and just get back to people in general. A few years ago, when I was working with my CEO coach, one of the first things he said is like, when you get these text messages from all these people or whatever, do you ever just pause and ask, is this the most important thing that I can do right now? And that was a really like great, impactful note to get, because every single time I get messages like that and I want to go respond or I want to go do thing, I ask myself, is this the most important thing I can be doing right now?
I love
think
that.
that's great. I've realized that recently. You don't have, I know it's customers are different, but like internal stuff, You don't have to be that responsive. You have to focus on where you can drive an impact.
On the delivery side, we had this obsession with, we think we're in the business of important problems that have urgency associated with them. We confused urgency and immediacy. So we had to run at a pace that made no sense. And we were 10 times faster than anyone else, but we could slow it down a little bit and still treat it urgently for the client, but actually give ourselves more time to better solve the problem. And that was a game changer for us. So usually slowing down can be quite an unlock. This was fun.
What a great episode.
Good episode.
Thanks for listening to Topline, everybody. Give us some ratings. Join our Slack channel. It's been good recently.
600 people.
Are we on episode 100 yet?
We're at 95 episodes, 600 people in Slack, 80,000 on the newsletter. New York Times is going to be eating our dust soon. Wall Street Journal, what is that? Dinosaurs?
Asad, what do you think about the tariffs?
Washington Post.
What does Asad think about tariffs? All right. We don't want to talk about this. This will alienate all of the Bruno family. Thanks for listening. We love you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
This episode was brought to you by AirCall, the business communications intelligence platform. Deliver a better experience for your customers and your teams at AirCall. That's AIRCALL.io. Save time, save money, and improve performance with a single communications platform.
Thanks for listening to Topline. New episodes come out every Sunday. If you like what you heard today, subscribe so you never miss an episode, leave a 5-star review, and share it with your friends. Don't forget to join our Topline Slack channel to connect with us and discuss the topics we cover with other listeners. Click the link in the show notes. Lastly, if you're interested in joining Pavilion, you can learn more about membership at joinpavilion.com/membership. Thanks again for listening.